All right, what's going on, guys? It's mock draft time. Mid-season mock draft. There's not much to say, just mid-season mock draft. Order has actually kind of stayed pretty similar. There have been some trades, such as the Dolphins trade, and yeah, let's just get right into it. Big board has also kind of stayed the same as well. For the Houston Texans, who have stayed at the first overall pick for kind of a while now, I'm looking for them to pick best player available. To me, that is Will Anderson. It always has been. It's probably still gonna be after the offseason. Everybody's doing their film reviews and stuff, and so will I. It's looking like Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are the two best players in this draft, and I'm not seeing a defensive tackle go at number one. Will Anderson, edge rusher, definitely could see him going number one overall. And for the Texans, first of all, I don't think that quarterback is their biggest need, because I think Davis Mills is a serviceable quarterback at best. If they hire a new coach and they want a new quarterback, they're going to get one. But to me, I think a better move is the safer option, and that is going with a really good edge rusher. And also, I'm not in love with any of the quarterbacks in this draft class. I made kind of a separate video on that, and I will make a separate video on my YouTube channel about breaking down these quarterbacks. But C.J. Stroud, he has the size, he has the length and stuff. He doesn't have spectacular arm talent. He does have a very good arm, and he has good accuracy, but he's just, the Ohio State system is so wide receiver driven, and the Ohio State has excellent. They have Jackson Smith-Njigba and Marvin Harrison Jr., the two wide receiver ones of the next two classes, and they had the wide receiver 1 and 2 of last year's class with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. C.J. Stroud has just been given these godly wide receivers who are and will succeed in the NFL. It's hard to just evaluate him on a regular curve because of the weapons he's given. And against I forgot who they just played. I think they played Northwestern or some team. He didn't look good at all. It's just very hard to evaluate Ohio State players, especially. Justin Fields has really been the first player to break out, but that's because he has excellent ability with his legs. He hasn't proven himself as a passer yet, but he's getting better. And then with Bryce Young, 6 foot, 190 or 195 in the if he chooses to go to the combine or at his pro day, he's gonna be smaller than this. He does not look like 6 foot 150. He's more 5'11" to me, just because I know that Alabama does lie about their height and weight. Example, Devontae Smith, he was listed at 6'1", 185, came in at the combine at 6 feet flat and 175. And then you have Will Levis, who people compare to Josh Allen. He's not Josh Allen, even though he has a very good arm and he's athletic with a 4.6 speed. He is not Josh Allen, and people do overhype him. And I don't love Will Levis, but I think if he does go to a team that can maximize his ability with a good receiver, he probably will be good. And then you have Anthony Richardson, who is like a mix of Daniel Jones and Kyler Murray. If you mix those two, that's basically Anthony Richardson. But you have to include the decision-making, because Anthony Richardson has those like questionable decision-makings, throwing a lot. He does throw a good amount of interceptions, but he makes up for it with his legs. He's extremely athletic, and that can be said about both Daniel Jones and Kyler Murray. 6'4", too. So he's gonna be kind of an interesting prospect. Probably gonna go in the late first round, and then like Tyler Van Dyke, Spencer Rattler, and Hendon Hooker, who is 25, Jaron Hall, who's at a BYU. It's a very interesting quarterback class, and I don't know if I love any of them. So that's why, personally, I would be hesitant to draft quarterback again this year. Last year, the quarterback class sucked. We see it with Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis. Just wasn't a great quarterback class. Desmond Ridder, not getting any starts. Back to the all right. With that little rant out of the way, back to the mock draft. With Carolina, they are going to pick a quarterback, and that likely will probably be whichever quarterback fits the new coach's scheme. Matt Rule is probably gone after this year if they get a top pick. He's like Adam Gase 2.0 in my opinion. It depends on the scheme. If it's an RPO system, Bryce Young is likely the answer. If it is more a pro-ready, pass-heavy offense, probably go C.J. Stroud because of that accuracy. And looking at the Raiders, I think that building their offensive line is the most important. Josh McDaniels really does have a name to be either the worst or the second worst head coach in the league right now, mixed in there with Nathaniel Hackett. But more importantly, they need time. Derek Carr needs more time. I'm going to go with Peter Skronsky. To me, he is the best offensive tackle in this class. I think he's pro-ready and he has good technique. Paris Johnson is a close second. The Steelers horribly drafted Najee Harris. Najee Harris is Trent Richardson 2.0. Just wanted to put that out there. And Kenny Pickett's not looking great either. He has, I think, 3 touchdowns to 8 interceptions or 7, depending on how he did in the last game. I think they just had a bye. But looking at, the board right now, you're not picking a quarterback. I don't think you would pick a receiver, and I don't think Jalen Carter would be the answer to their problems, because their biggest problem to me is their offensive line. And who do they really have at tackle? They don't really have anybody. Paris Johnson going to the Steelers. I could see also Jalen Carter going there just because, spectacular ability, but Cameron Hayward still playing at a great level. That defense would be crazy. Anyways, with the Lions, this is also, I think, quarterback. I would really like to see Bryce Young in that system because you have Jameson Williams, who Bryce Young played with. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is very good. People do overrate him. I don't like to say this, but people do slightly overrate him because of fantasy football. We got to separate our fantasy football minds from our football minds. People slightly overrated. People think he's a top, 15 wide receiver. He's not there yet, but he is a very good receiver. Dominant, very good at the catch point. Good route running for a stocky USC receiver. I really like to see Bryce Young in that system. Depending on if Dan Campbell does get fired, their team has been looking sluggish, even though they have a great culture. The Eagles at 6, masterclass by Howie Roseman, masterclass kind of. They traded back in the first round last year with the Saints, and the Saints gave a first-round pick next year. That is the pick that they have right now, and the Eagles are 8-0, and they could still load up with that 6th overall pick, and they can do a whole lot with that. They can trade it down for another first-round pick next year. And who are they going to pick there? Depends. Because I personally would think that the move would be Jalen Carter, but you drafted Jordan Davis last year. You still have Fletcher Cox. You have a very, very deep defensive line that you have alluded a lot of money to. Javon Hargrave, you paid a lot of money to. But the thing with that is that they have the worst run defense. They have the worst run D EPA in the league right now. And that is attributed to Jordan Davis being out because Jordan Davis is so elite against the run. So they have a lot of options here. They don't need a cornerback because James Bradbury and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay, not DJ Reed, Darius Slay, all playing at elite levels. So it does depend if you bring back James Bradbury next year. But I think that the biggest need for them on paper is linebacker, but you're not picking Noah Sewell. So I'm actually going to go with Kalen Ringo because Darius Slay at 32 or 31, I think he's 31, at that age, and then James Bradbury is also 29, and he's on a 1-year contract. CJ Gardner-Johnson's also in a contract year. I think he's playing primary safety right now. So if you want to have start breeding and molding a cornerback 1 like Kalen Ringo, who is very good at Georgia, and Georgia has proven to give pro-ready players, I would not sneeze at that at all. Cardinals are an interesting team because they just flat out just kind of suck. They're just not a good team. 3-6. I made this prediction in the preseason that they would be like this. Kyler Murray is struggling mightily, especially because of that Call of Duty. And, you know, they don't really have a cornerback one to guard anybody. Byron Murphy is underrated, but who do you really have? And that makes me, and their offensive line outside of their left tackle, I always forget his name, but outside of him, they really don't have anybody. So that makes me believe that I really want to give them a defensive piece, because for wide receiver, they're fine with DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown. And that leads me to believe that I would go with Jalen Carter. J.J. Watt likely, I think he'll probably, J.J. Watt's probably going to retire after this year. You know, he had a heart problem, he had cardiac arrest during the preseason. And I just think it's time for him to retire. Move Jalen Carter in that spot. Boom, you have a dominant defensive lineman who kind of fell to 7 just because of the teams above him needing offensive tackle. Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are in a great spot next year because they have Christian Kirk, they've got Calvin Ridley, Trevor Lawrence is showing improvement, but he just needs to stop fumbling, and, you know, if he starts winning those game-winning drives, he'll probably separate himself as a potential top 10 quarterback right now, or top 15. So you hope to see that kind of potential. The offensive line's holding up I think the offensive line's fine enough, and I don't think any of the offensive linemen in this spot at 8 are good enough to where you'd want to pick them, leading me to believe they probably should go with a defensive player. Devin Lloyd was a great pick, and edge rusher isn't the biggest need because you just picked the #1 overall pick, Trayvon Walker. You have Josh Allen. You have Devin Lloyd as a linebacker. And Tyson Campbell is finally coming on as a cornerback. But you really don't have anybody outside of that, leading me to believe you're going to go with Cam Smith as your cornerback 2 or 1, depending on, you know, which player you line up. But I really do like Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Bears at 9. Bears are looking like a good team. I don't think they will be at 9. I think they end up getting slightly closer to 500 as the season goes on, because Justin Fields is having his breakout year. Very happy about that. I had him as my quarterback 3. I had him above Trey Lance in 2021. And for the Bears, I think getting a wide receiver 1 type player like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ohio State credibility, that's perfect for what Justin Fields needs. You get him an X receiver. You trade a second-round pick for Chase Claypool. Now, Chase Claypool isn't great, but he fits the mold of that X receiver. Don't love that you gave a second-round pick for him. You have that Y/slot in Darnell Mooney, and then you put Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot, or you put him in the Y. That receiver core is now so much better than it was at the beginning of the year when it was just Darnell Mooney and a bunch of randoms. That receiver core is completely revamped, and then in the offseason, the Bears have the most cap space in the NFL, and I'm going to make a video about this as well in the offseason, how the Bears can become contenders in 1 year. You have all that offseason cap space. Go invest in an offensive line, and go invest in, you know, a revamped defensive line. You gave away Roquan Smith. You gave away Robert Quinn. Reinvest, especially in the offense. I hope that they really do invest in Justin Fields as much as possible. And I think they do. It's looking like they will. So I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a perfect pick at 9 for them. Green Bay Packers. I believe Aaron Rodgers will be gone after this year. I really, really, really believe he will. Alan Lazard is in a contract year. Likely won't return with Aaron Rodgers. So what do you do here? You have a really good defense. You have a good-ish offensive line, even though it's performing bad this year. You know, the receiver core, your running backs are good, so you're not going to overdraft any of them. So who do you pick? And that leads me to believe that they're going to go with a receiver. They're going to kind of stab Aaron Rodgers in the back and pick a receiver the year he leaves. They likely have another. If they trade Aaron Rodgers, or if Aaron Rodgers retires, they potentially get a first-round pick back if they do trade him. So it boils down to, what receiver do you pick? Keyshawn Butte not having a great year. Not having a great year at LSU. Even though... because I remember seeing he was struggling in the beginning of the... Yeah, just, you know, his game logs. The last good game he had was Florida when he had 115 yards. You know, Auburn. I shut down at Auburn. Keyshawn Butte's having a down year than what you wouldn't like to see. Jordan Addison has a beautiful connection with Caleb Williams. And Quentin Johnston's having a great year. Josh Downs is having such a good year. I believe Jordan Addison just has that pure talent that you're looking for at the receiver position. That where he can be like a Jamar Chase type of wide receiver where you can mix the technical and physical blend. And I really like that to Green Bay. You give Jordan Love a #1 target. Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks draft last year, or technically this year, was beautiful. Charles Cross, Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Boya Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu. What a draft class you had last year. And you have 2 first-round picks this year. So you can once again hit on more players, revamping that. Now, looking at their team, it doesn't have a ton of holes other than potentially offensive line. But I think defensive line is their biggest, weakness per se. I think their secondary is good. You have 2 young, really good cornerbacks, Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant. Safeties, you still have Jamal Adams. You have Diggs as well. Linebackers, you have Jordan Brooks as your LB1, your inside guy. So who are you going to pick? You pick a very good edge rusher with a ton of potential that could fit very well into their system. Noah Smith out of Georgia. Let me even show you. His measurables are great as well. 6'3", 235. He's very small. He's small for the position, but I'm pretty sure he's listed at, larger than that. He's listed at 6. Yes, he is. All right, so he is listed at 6'3", 235. He is dealing with injuries this year, but Nolan Smith generates a ton of pressure. Yes, Georgia does. I had said this a lot last year. This is one of my major points about Georgia. They implement a heavy rotation, so that's the reason why Nolan Smith doesn't have a lot of sacks. But compared to Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith generates a lot of pressure, especially alongside Jalen Carter. So, you want to get that edge rusher one. You do have Uchenna Nwosu, who has 7 sacks this year as a rookie. But seal both edges. Both edges is a very important thing to have. And don't think you get a guy like Jalen Carter at 11. Detroit Lions are back up. Leaning towards... I don't want them to pick I was leaning towards Myles Murphy for a slight second because they gave away T.J. Hawkinson. They traded away T.J. Hawkinson to the Vikings. But you're not gonna send away the 8th overall pick for a second and a third back just to pick it again. So I'm looking for a second. I don't want to pick a safety because you're not picking the safety at 12. So I think they should go with their cornerback. And I think my easy quarterback CB2 is Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Wide receivers also there. And that leads me to the Houston Texans. Houston Texans, this is an easy Quentin Johnston. Last year your main focus was, offensive line, drafting, and then you would draft Eric Stingley as well for the secondary. Now you focus on some offensive side. Brandon Cooks likely is done after this year. He requested a trade at the trade deadline. So go with a replacement kind of. And if you want to build towards the future, you draft Quentin Johnston out of TCU, who's looking very, very good this year. And moving on to the Colts. I genuinely don't believe they have this pick this year. Because I think that they trade I think they'll just end up giving this first for a quarterback, some type of quarterback, because Jim Irsay, their owner, is quite impatient, and he's quite impatient, and he does rely on emotion quite a bit because he is a hands-on owner, and they've traded away first. They've traded away draft capital for quarterbacks in a win now mode, and will they have this pick next year? Possibly. If they don't, they probably lose. I think they lose out this entire year, so they might end up drafting a quarterback. But for the Colts, if you do have this pick, you're leaning towards quarterback. It's your biggest need. Probably going to go with Will Levis. I think he does clear Anthony Richardson. Good arm, decent accuracy, decently pro ready, but I don't love him per se, but he's good. He's definitely a good pick. And for their scheme, is Jeff Saturday gonna be the head coach next year? Who knows? Who knows at this point with the Colts? But if they want to build towards the future with a good quarterback, you could try out Will Levis. I mean, they're just a franchise that will throw things at the board and see if it sticks. Atlanta Falcons performing a lot better than I thought they would. I did not expect the Falcons to be as good as they're doing now. So it's interesting to see what they do, because Arthur Smith is a very interesting head coach. He's a very interesting head coach because he comes from that Tennessee scheme where it is like a heavy balanced run scheme. And, they drafted Drake London 8th overall last year, and they drafted Kyle Pitts 4th overall. Obviously, Arthur Smith wasn't a part of the Kyle Pitts one. But seemingly, they don't use their weapons. They tend to favor, Arthur Smith is smart in the fact that he will use them as decoys in favor of, making a good play. But at the same time, you want to use your weapons to your advantage. Kyle Pitts should be getting 8 targets a game. Drake London should be getting 8 targets a game. But they really don't have a quarterback who is very good at passing. That and Marcus Mariota. So what do you do here? Do you go out and draft a quarterback in Anthony Richardson? Or do you continue to build through your motto? And if you actually watch the Falcons, they run the ball a ton. That makes me believe that Bijan Robinson is an option for them at 17. And that's what I'm going to pick. I think Bijan Robinson easily could go, even top 15, because Bijan Robinson is a true every down back. You see, example, Breece Hall this year. If you look at Breece Hall, what was he able to do? He got at least minimum 3 targets a game and minimum 20 carries a game, 3 down back. That could be Bijan Robinson. And Cordell Patterson's a guy you can move anywhere. And if you put Bijan Robinson in that system, that's a very good running back to put in an Arthur Smith system. Now with the Commanders aren't interesting because they just will never find a quarterback. Taylor Heineke, is he going to get the start? Is he not? What about Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz, they have a good receiver core, but it's kind of underutilized. So it's interesting to see what they kind of do. Their defensive line is great, but their secondary has just been so bad that I'm leaning towards Antonio Johnson, who has great size at the position out of Texas A&M. Kind of a down year because Texas A&M just completely sucks this year. With the Patriots, I'm going to go with Keyshawn Butte pretty easily. Looking for a wide receiver one. You got Bailey Zapp, who played pretty well in the opportunities he was given other than the Bears game. Mac Jones has not looked great this year. 4 touchdowns to 8 interceptions is questionable, coming off such a good rookie year. And is that attributed to the offensive line? Is it attributed to scheme? Is that attributed to him not being good? Is it the wide receiver's fault? It's definitely not Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson is carrying that team. So go with Keyshawn Butte, who is having a down year, but I think that he kind of fits Bill Belichick's system well. With the Bengals, I just do not care at all you're picking offensive linemen no matter what. Just Jonah Williams and Lyle Collins. Jonah Williams and Lyle Collins are legit trying to get Joe Burrow killed. They're trying to get him killed. They probably got money on the over for the sacks, the amount of sacks that those two give up. Lyle Collins, I thought it was a good offseason addition. He is not good. And then Jonah Williams is a complete bust. I think he was the 11th overall pick. Those guys are just complete open doors. They allow Joe Burrow gets sacked every single time. You're picking an offensive tackle no matter what as the Bengals. In my opinion, that's what I think you should do. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This all depends on whether Tom Brady is the quarterback next year. If he's not the quarterback, who the hell are you going to put in there? You need to draft a quarterback at that point because Kyle Trask, arguably one of the worst quarterback draft picks in the second round of all time. They picked him with the 64th overall pick. Wow, he's looked in the opportunities that he was ever given, he looked horrible, especially in training camp this year. But, what do you really have to build around after Tom Brady leaves? You were in that such big win now mode, and you won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But, the cornerbacks are not looking great this year, giving up a lot. The Bucs offensive line has been, battered with injuries this year. Leonard Fournette is just not a very good running back, but you're not going to pick a running back high. In my opinion, Tom Brady, I don't think Tom Brady does retire. I just don't think he retires. He divorcing Giselle kind of freed him up. And I'm really debating who to pick because I do think that, I really don't know where, I just don't know where the Bucs kind of go after this offseason. They just reload again. And that makes me think if you want to reload again, then you're going to go with probably an edge rusher like Myles Murphy. And I think that's kind of it. Yeah. Shaq Barrett went out with a Achilles or an ACL. I think he's done for the season. You picked Joe Tryon in the first round in 2021, who just doesn't look great. So you hope to get, a true edge rusher in Myles Murphy. The Denver Broncos, this is the trade with the Miami Dolphins that they made. Denver Broncos just flat out kind of suck, They're always looking to trade their pieces. Russell Wilson's not looking great. And I think that Noah Sewell at linebacker kind of fits their linebacker need. They really don't have a true linebacker one. And Denver Broncos are a very interesting team because they're just doing so bad for being a team that was supposed to be very good. They have a lot of pieces, especially at the receiver position, the defense. But it's just, they have the pieces. They have the individual pieces, but they can't fit it together. And a lot of that goes down to coaching. Nathaniel Hackett sucks. He just flat out sucks. If they get a better coach, I think they could put it all together in a very good way. But Russell Wilson also holds back their team a ton, which sucks to see. Same thing can be said about the Chargers with Brandon Staley, defensive head coach out of that Rams scheme, and it just hasn't looked great. So what do you do when you have a franchise quarterback and you want to give him as many pieces as you can? You give him Josh Downs. You give him a wide receiver. You give him a slot wide receiver that can replace Keenan Allen, who Keenan Allen basically has not played all year with a hamstring injury. The day-to-day injury with him. Something's very wrong with his hamstring. And he's a guy that runs like a 4.6, a 4.7, who is not a deep threat at all. He's a very good route runner, but he's such an intermediate, player. And then you have Mike Williams, who is a good receiver, but also he is a guy who either gets 10 targets a game or 1. He's not a separator at all, but he's dominant at the catch point, and he's very good in the red zone. But you don't have that player that can just get out in space. You don't have that player. You got, I guess, Keenan Allen, but Keenan Allen's old and slow. Mike Williams, not very good at separating. And then you get Josh Downs. Josh Downs can separate. He can be that piece that you're missing where you can keep him open and you can have him on just running crossers. Jalen Guyton, I guess. Jalen Guyton, maybe. But Jalen Guyton is not Josh Downs. Tennessee Titans. I would look for if Josh Downs wasn't picked before, that's probably the move you make. But I would not bet on the health at all of Bussin' and the Boys co-host Taylor Lewan, who is consistently out with injury like every single year. Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse, and Syracuse had such a great year. Kind of falling apart a little bit, but Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse has looked good. And Tennessee has consistently proven that they will draft offensive tackles early. Just for the sake of picking them to try to boost that offensive line, because Derrick Henry is just so implemental to your scheme. I could see a quarterback going here, but anyways, Seattle with their second pick in the first round. I'm looking at a best player available type player, and sorry, looking at likely a Brian Brees. I think they are missing good interior defensive tackles. They are a bit suspect to get the run. I can see them going with offensive linemen as well. But their offensive line's they have a good future offensive line, especially with Charles Cross and Tyron. I always forget his name. But I'll pick Brian Brees out of... Why did I skip? Out of Clemson. The Baltimore Ravens. Do you want to re-sign Roquan Smith, or do you want to re-sign Lamar Jackson? Which pill do you choose? Do you re-sign both? Do you re-sign one, or do you re-sign none? All depends, because Patrick Queen. I'm just trying to get to a point about Trent Simpson. Who knows what you have with, your whole system? What do you in? Do you go with a receiver here? Who are the best receivers right now? Do you go the quarterback? Are you going to re-sign Lamar Jackson? Are you? Are you going to re-sign Roquan Smith? Because if you're not, are you Trent Simpson? I believe that Lamar Jackson stays. I just think that Lamar Jackson does stay as a Raven. That leads me to believe that he won't have enough money for anything else. I'm going to go with Trent Simpson out of Clemson. Very good, by the way. Trent Simpson is my linebacker 2 next to Noah Sewell, who has been playing so great. He's like a Mike. He's like a strong side linebacker if he was a Mike. And then Trenton Simpson's a similar way, but except he's just he's 25 pounds smaller, and he can move around the field a little bit better. But, you're drafting another really good linebacker. Patrick Queen just hasn't worked out. He's just not a great tackler, and he's soft in coverage, not great against the run. He's gotten better over the season, but in the beginning of the season, he was just completely replaceable. And, the Ravens were forced into a move where they had to get Roquan Smith. The New York Jets at 25. New York Jets are playing so good this year. And I would be questionable, or I would be remiss if I didn't say that the Jets still need help at linebacker. And it really sucks that Trenton Simpson does go off the board, because I think that the Jets' biggest need is linebacker currently. C.J. Mosley is in his last year of his contract. Quincy Williams is also on a 1 year, and then Quan Alexander is also on a 1 year. So you basically have no linebackers after this year, other than Jamie and Sherwood. And I think that the offensive line is fine if you get Mekhi Becton back for a full year. I do think George Fant is gone after this year. And, you do have Dwayne Brown. You have Mekhi Becton. You have Max Mitchell as your swing. You have, a good receiver core. Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson are looking good. Elijah Moore likely going to get tossed in the fire. You have Breece Hall hopefully coming back next year, but you still have Michael Carter, Zach Wilson, Your cornerback core is beautiful with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II. So to me, in this position, it's all dependent on either safety or linebacker. It's either Henry Tuiyotu or Trent Simpson, or it is Brandon Joseph at another Dame. Even though Brandon Joseph is small as hell, I think that the Jets would like to go with just a linebacker that they can breed. Somebody like maybe their own kind of the linebacker. Why am I blanking on the linebacker on the 49ers? Fred Warner. Hopefully, you're looking for your own type of Fred Warner. With the Dallas Cowboys. Receiver would every team kind of needs receiver at this point. But I know they're looking for Odell, but outside of CeeDee Lamb, who do you really have at receiver? You know, they do have. Oh my God, why am I blanking right now? Yeah, you do have Michael Gallup coming off of an ACL. You know, he's coming back into the mix, but he's not fully there yet. And I mean, looking at their secondary, Trayvon Diggs is finally coming along, which is great. Their defensive line is looking a lot better this year. Micah Parsons and Dexter Lawrence are finally just doing their thing. And I just think that safety. I still think that safety is the biggest. Still think that safety is their biggest need. So I'm going to go with Brandon Joseph. You know, who do you really have at safety? Trayvon Diggs, being such a ball hawk and being so good outside of 20 yards, kind of saves their safeties a lot because you can't really target that area of the field. So I'm going to go with Brandon Joseph there. With the Giants at 27, looking for wide receiver, and we're going to go with Jalen Hyatt, who has been playing so good at Tennessee. Jalen Hyatt, you know, he had the 5. Was it a 5 touchdown? Oh my God. I think he had a 5. Didn't he have a 5 touchdown game? Didn't Jalen Hyatt have a 5 touchdown game against Alabama? Because I know he went crazy against Alabama. Yes, yeah. Jalen Hyatt against Alabama was 6 for 207 for 5 touchdowns. What a stat line. And that makes me want to go with him for the Giants. For the Kansas City Chiefs, I think wide receiver is perfectly fine. I think your offensive line holds up pretty well. So this is looking for any defensive player you can get. And I think BJ Ojulari would be a good move. Due to the fact, you know, Frank Clark is... I don't know if Frank Clark is on a contract year or not. I think he might be. And you really don't have an edge rusher outside of him. You know, the Chiefs have been putting Chris Jones on the edge for God's sake. So put in BJ Ojulari. Pretty sure he's the younger brother of Azeez Ojulari on the Giants. Minnesota Vikings. This is cornerback. We're going to go with Carl Phillips III. Secondary, you know, it got burned a lot especially against the Eagles. That's the prime example. So we're going to go with hopefully your cornerback. They really don't have a cornerback right now. They really don't have a cornerback. Yeah. So there are only 31 picks because the Miami Dolphins had to forfeit their pick because they were found guilty of essentially tanking. Yeah. So for the 30th pick, the Buffalo Bills are projected to make the Super Bowl. You should go with... Your offense would be so deadly if you pick Jahmyr Gibbs. That would be a fun offense. Explosiveness, phenomenal potential. I labeled him in a previous video as the best receiving back in the class. I know you picked James Cook out of Georgia, but James Cook can't do what Jahmyr Gibbs can do. Jahmyr Gibbs has home run speed potential, and Imagine the Bills offense with that. And then the Eagles, you have your second pick of the draft, looking for potentially. Did I picked safety for them already? Did I? No, I picked Kalen Ringo. Yeah, this is a linebacker move for me. No. I really don't. I guess, yeah. Their offensive line is good. It's just they don't really need a defensive. I mean, wow, it's just like the Eagles are just so set that I really don't even know who to pick. Yeah, okay, we'll go with Jordan Battle. And yeah, with that being said, that's going to be the mock draft. Very long video. Sorry about it being a very long video, but I just had to nerd out on a bunch of the offseason moves. You know, it's midseason. Just let loose. Give all the information you have. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you like, comment, follow my Twitter, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my TikTok at BigReegsYT, and thank you for watching.